lesser leaders, politicians who opposed him, and businessmen, educators, musicians, football coaches and players, and other individuals, many of them obscure, but all having something significant to contribute to the long story. Altogether, the reminiscences of 295 individuals were gathered. Their statements were in nearly every case tape-recorded and later placed in typescript form. As I continued with the research, I became increasingly convinced of the validity of oral history. Not only was it a necessary tool in compiling the history of the recent past, but it also provided an unusually intimate look into that past. I found that the politicians were astonishingly frank in detailing their dealings, and often completely realistic in viewing themselves. But they had not trusted a record of these dealings to paper, and it would not have occurred to them to transcribe their experiences at a later time. Anybody who heard them would have to conclude that the full and inside story of politics is not in any age committed to the documents. Those interviewed understood that I was gathering material for a book, and that I would cite their names as sources in my footnotes. Only a few asked that their names not be used, and others requested that they not be named in connection with certain statements. I have respected their wishes, and in place of their names have employed the phrase confidential communication. Some academic readers may object to the introduction of unidentified sources, but the practice is sometimes necessary in taking testimony from living persons. However, I have placed my typescripts in the Louisiana State University Library under a time seal, and eventually they will be available to other scholars. As I proceeded with the research, various persons asked me if I was going to write a pro-Long or an anti-Long book. I expected the question from Louisianians. Huey Long aroused among his people extreme feelings, love or hate, and they still find it difficult to view him neutrally. I was surprised, however, that many persons outside the state also asked the question, indicating that they too reacted to Long in terms of extremes. Long was obviously the type of leader who excites violent antithetical emotions in people, even in those not closely associated with him. He has inspired such emotions in those writers who have treated him, most of whom have been repelled by him. I have tried to regard him objectively, cutting through the myths that have grown up about him and trying to see the real man, and I hope that I have succeeded. I should add, however, that I have certain concepts about Long and leaders like him, and these have influenced what I have written here. I believe that some men of power, can influence the course of history. They appear in response to conditions, but they may alter the conditions, may give a new direction to history. In the process, they may do great good or evil, or both, but whatever the case, they leave a different kind of world behind them. Their accomplishment should be recognized. I believe that Huey Long was this kind of man. I also agree with what I understand to be the thesis of Robert Penn Warren in All the King's Men, that the politician who wishes to do good may have to do some evil to achieve his goal. This was the course that was forced on the hero of Warren's novel, Willie Stark, who was a politician much like Long. It is also the course that Long, faced with a relentless opposition, felt he had to follow. Stark was in the end possessed by the evil or the method, and was destroyed. Long did not come to such a dramatic fate, but in striving to do good, he was led on to grasp for more and more power, until finally he could not always distinguish between the method and the goal, the power and the good. His story is a reminder, if we need one, that a great politician may be a figure of tragedy. During the course of my research, I received assistance from many persons and incurred many obligations. I have tried to acknowledge these debts at appropriate places in the footnotes and bibliography, and if I have omitted anyone, it is an oversight of the mind and not the heart. I have here to record my gratitude to T.N. McMullen, V.L. Bedsole, and other members of the Louisiana State University Library staff, who gave me unfailing cooperation, to Fred Benton, Jr., an attorney friend who read the manuscript with an expert legal eye, to Professor Frank Friedel, who shared with me his intimate knowledge of the era of Franklin D. Roosevelt, to Mrs. Thomas Smiley, an expert editor who improved many chapters, and to Ben C. Toledano, who searched energetically for pictures of Long. A special vote of thanks goes to my editor at the House of Knopf, Ashbel Green. For research grants that enabled me to take off needed time in the initial stages of my study, I am grateful to the American History Research Center. Senator Russell Long, wishing to aid my work, but determined to avoid the appearance of subvention, contributed to this fund. And the John Simon Guggenheim Memorial Foundation. T. Harry Williams.